When most people think of Dawson's Creek, they think of the central love triangle: Dawson, Joey, and Pacey. But quietly running underneath that main story was another connection, one that evolved in a quiet, more grounded way. Because if you look closely, Dawson and Jen may have actually been the show's most genuine version of soulmates. Their story wasn't about fate, first love, or destiny. It was about what happens when two people grow up, face their own flaws, and finally learn how to see each other clearly. Before we dive in, a quick spoiler warning. This video covers major plot points from across all 6 seasons of Dawson's Creek. If you haven't finished your rewatch yet, it might be best to pause here and come back when you're ready to revisit the heartbreak, friendship, and emotional honesty of late 90s and early 2000s TV. And if you love these kinds of deep dives into noughties TV, the era of WB melodrama, smart-talking teens, and devastating finales, make sure you subscribe to the Hangout. This channel is all about revisiting the shows that shaped us and seeing what they still have to say today. When Jen first arrives in Capeside, she immediately becomes a symbol for everything Dawson believes about romance and destiny. She's the girl who literally steps off the taxi and into his story. The outsider who seems to complete his movie-perfect narrative. The problem is that Dawson doesn't fall in love with Jen as a person. He falls in love with the version of her that fits neatly into his idealized world. It all comes to a head in that truly wild moment when he tries to discreetly film their first kiss. A perfect snapshot of how much he values the fantasy over the reality. Meanwhile, Jen is just a teenager trying to escape the weight of her past, looking not for a fantasy, but for someone who can accept her as she really is. That mismatch defines their early dynamic. Dawson idealizes her purity and innocence, while Jen is desperate to be known for her honesty and complexity. Their relationship crumbles, not because there's no connection, but because it begins before either of them truly understands what love actually is. This failure is essential, though. It lays the foundation for what will eventually become their most meaningful bond. Not a teenage romance, but a deep, adult friendship rooted in mutual respect. At its core, Season 1 shows Dawson's immaturity colliding with Jen's hard-earned self-awareness. The relationship fails, but it teaches them both what not to do, and it plants the first seeds of understanding. Over the next few seasons, Dawson and Jen drift in and out of each other's orbits. The show often uses them as emotional foils. Dawson chasing idealism and control, Jen confronting disillusionment and self-worth. While Dawson chases Joey and his dream of cinematic destiny, Jen is fighting a very different battle, one rooted in learning to forgive herself and discovering where she truly belongs. What's fascinating is how their journeys quietly mirror each other. Dawson learns that not every story ends neatly, while Jen learns that she doesn't have to define herself by her past mistakes. Both are learning humility, the recognition that love isn't about perfection, but compassion. By the time they reconnect in later seasons, they've both changed. Dawson has softened. He's no longer the boy who sees life through a script. And Jen has stabilized. She's no longer trying to run from who she is. When they finally become friends, It's with a kind of ease that wasn't possible before. There's no pedestal, no power imbalance, and no illusion. It's a friendship between equals, something rare and beautifully earned in the world of Dawson's Creek. When Dawson and Jen reconnect romantically in season 5, it's easy to dismiss it as a brief subplot. But it's actually one of the show's most mature and grounded explorations of love. At this point, both characters have lived through heartbreak, loss, and disappointment. The intensity of teenage fantasy has faded, replaced by something quieter and more real. Their connection feels less like a grand declaration and more like an emotional homecoming. For once, Dawson isn't trying to mold love into the perfect story. He's simply present, willing to experience love without trying to control it. Jen, for her part, allows herself to be vulnerable in a way that she couldn't before. What's most striking about this version of their relationship is its normalcy. It doesn't burn brightly or dramatically, but it feels emotionally sustainable, full of genuine care, understanding, and affection. It's grounded in mutual respect, the kind that comes from seeing each other clearly after years of projection and misunderstanding. And that's partly why so many fans still look back on their season 5 relationship with a sense of disappointment that it ended so abruptly. For the first time, Dawson and Jen seemed to find a rhythm that worked. Mature, kind, and emotionally safe. Their bond felt like something that could have lasted if the show had allowed it the space to grow. Even though it ends, it doesn't feel like a failure. It feels like two people finally meeting each other at the right emotional temperature, after years of existing on different wavelengths. Their brief romance doesn't rewrite history. It redeems it. By the final seasons, Dawson and Jen's relationship has evolved into something deeper than romantic love. It's a connection built on forgiveness, trust, and quiet understanding. While Dawson's relationships with Joey and Pacey are often defined by tension, longing, and ego, his connection with Jen is about acceptance. He doesn't need to idealize her anymore, and she doesn't need to prove anything to him. They've outgrown the illusions of adolescence and found something gentler. The kind of bond that doesn't rely on declarations of forever, but on showing up for each other when it matters most. Their friendship in the final season, especially at the very end during Jen's illness, underscores this transformation. Dawson isn't her savior or her fantasy. He's simply her friend, standing beside her without judgment or expectation. So if Dawson and Joey represent what we think soulmates are supposed to look like, first love, destiny, longing, Dawson and Jen represent what they actually become. Empathy, forgiveness, and the ability to love someone fully for who they are. In that sense, they are true soulmates. Jen doesn't need Dawson to complete her, and Dawson doesn't need Jen to validate him. They simply see each other, fully, finally, and without judgment. Dawson and Jen never got the grand romantic ending that television usually promises. But maybe that's what makes their story so quietly powerful. It's the story of two imperfect people who began with projection and ended with understanding. It's not cinematic, but it's deeply human. And maybe that's what real soulmates look like after all. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to the Hangout for more explorations of early 2000s television. The shows that raised us, shaped us, and still hit a little too close to home. Let's keep revisiting the stories that define the era, one rewatch at a time.